I'm just working on the diverter at the moment and I'm just about to test it, so I thought while I've got it in this stage I'll do a little video to show you how it's assembled. Okay, this is the chamber in here, the mixing chamber, and these are the outlets at the bottom here. One goes to the bath, one goes to the shower. This one here goes to the bath and this one here goes to the shower. The pipe that's blanked off, now this would be the hot feed, that's blanked off just while I test it, and this pipe here is the cold feed, which I'll put a hose pipe on here and test it. And inside you can see the two outlets. This is the diverter plate itself, that's the main hole here. The little holes, if you're wondering what they're for, when you rotate between the outlets, if it's live, if the water feed is feeding it, when you get into no man's land in between the two, obviously the chamber will then pressurise, and what it'll do, it'll press against the diverter plate to the base plate, and it'll be very, very difficult to turn it. So the idea of the little holes is that it relieves the pressure between the two holes till you locate the correct outlet that you want. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll start assembling this. So what you need to note is that on here there's a little arrow, because it's very important everything lines up when this is assembled. So there's a little arrow here, and on the diverter plate there's a little arrow here. So if you line the two up, and then don't drop it in, because obviously we've got two mating surfaces here that need to go together rather nicely. It's a little bit tight on the side where the inlet pipes are, because they go right through, and it sits on a little pin inside. You can't see it now, so I'm going to line up the arrows, and just to double check that here lines up as well. Okay, so that's in. Now the next thing you need to put in is this spring. So the spring goes in and it sits on a little shoulder on the diverter plate. The next item is a nylon spacer, and that basically correctly puts enough tension through the spring onto the diverter plate. Okay, so just checking that everything is lining up. This is the cap that goes on top, and again there's a little arrow on here, and if you look, there's a groove here, and you need to put an O-ring on. Now the O-ring size, I'll give you it now. The internal diameter of that O-ring is 50mm, that's 50mm, and the cross section is 3.5mm. Okay, so we'll put that on like that. The next thing you need to do is put a little bit of silicone grease or Vaseline onto the O-ring just to help it go in. So there we go, all the way around. So I'm just making sure I've got everything in the correct order here. Yep, right. So if we line up the arrows, and then what you need to make sure is that, can you see these little holes? Just line them up and then just push it together. That's it. Now you might have to just twist it a little bit. If it's not quite lined up, you might have to just twist this just to get it to line up. I'm just going to pop it in the vise while the video's on, just to help me line that up, because it will be an awful lot easier to do it like that. Right, those are lined up. Now the next thing is there's these little 4BA machine screws here that need to go in, and there's 3 of them, and if you don't get your holes lined up, there'll be a devil to get in. And I'm just going to twist this round a little bit because it's not quite lined up, so just bear with me. No, it needs a little bit more. Right, let's try that now. Yep, that's better. So it's important to line them up. Now, before I put them screws in, I'm going to put the main shaft in. So again, the shaft has got a little arrow on it, which is here, that needs to line up with these other arrows. There are some O-rings in here. I'll give you the size of them now. They're 10mm internal diameter, and the cross section is 2.5mm. Now again, I'm just going to put a little bit of Vaseline. You put silicone grease on here or Vaseline onto those O-rings, and I'm going to line up my arrow. There we go, look, arrow, and just very carefully lower this down into here. Now what you will have to do is you've got to push the O-rings through the opening in here, so there's a little bit of resistance, and then what you must do is wiggle it about to get it to locate on that square hole on the diverter plate that's in here. So anyway, that's in now, so I'm going to just cap this lot off while it's in. Okay, so the other thing that needs to go on next is this nut. Now the nut has got a locking bolt because this nut is stopping this whole shaft coming out when it's pressurised. So if you carefully screw that fella in, it can be a little bit of a jiggle because what you've got is a thread running down the side of the thread, if you see what I mean. So it's sort of catching on it as I'm bringing it round, so I'm putting a spanner on there to bring it round. So when it comes round, you don't need to fully tighten that up, and when you screw, can you see, when you screw this in, it'll go so far through that nut and then it'll go into the main body, and what you've got to do is just wiggle the nut about so that the threads line up. I think it's in the best position, so that the threads line up on the bolt and onto here as well. So it'll go in easy so far, and then I can feel some resistance. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wiggle that with my spanner just to get it to line up, and if you just carry on, what you don't want to do is actually damage that thread. So once you get it in the right position, you see it's lined up now, it's going in really easily. Okay, so we'll screw that into there. Right, that can't accidentally come undone now. So I'm just going to put the rest of these bolts in a minute, but before I do that I'll just show you how the tap head lines up. Now there is underneath here a tiny little centre punch mark that lines up with the centre punch mark on the shaft, like that. Now that obviously is important with the orientation because of the engraved plate, so it lines up bath or shower. And then you've got a little grub screw here, which, can't move this back, there we go. So this little grub screw there. Obviously on this shaft here there are other bits to go on there, but for the purposes of just testing this and doing the video so you can see how it's assembled, I'm not going to obviously put this lot on. Okay, so I'll finish the video now, but remember you've got the remaining 4BA little machine bolts to put in here, and that now is the diverter. It self stops when it's in the correct position. If I turn this, you'll see it going, see the little holes, look, the relief holes, and then you see how it lines up. So you've got outlet to bath or shower, I'm not quite sure where that is at the moment, and as it rotates it goes to the next one, and then you've got your relief holes, look there. Okay, right, I'm going to test that, and I think that's all you need to know. Okay, cheerio.